We're live here on Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast presented by Heineken, and we're live tonight from across the pond in DuPont Circle. We got a big crowd joining us, and excited is maybe not the right word to talk about DC United soccer tonight, but we got a lot of things going on the show. There's obviously a lot more important things going on in the world that we're going to address on tonight's show, but we should talk just a bit about the game we just tried to watch. Not the best performance tonight from DC United, and it got a little bit better in the second half, but the roster wasn't there tonight. I mean, 5 critical players out with injury. Just to look through it, I mean, missing Bill Hamid, Steven Birnbaum, Frederick Briant, Russell Canales, Edison Flores, and obviously Paul Arriola all season.
Yeah.
You didn't expect good things, but Sam Kastner, Joshua Morgan joining me tonight. I'm John Lee. Michael Black is on leave tonight, so hopefully he's having a good vacation. But guys, where do we go from here?
Anywhere else, right?
Yeah. Up, I think, because it's hard to go much lower. Yeah, that was rough. I mean, I think something could be said for the second half because it didn't end 6-7-0, right? Like, that was kind of the way it was going.
I think that's because Philly took their foot off the gas a little bit, but some good minutes in there in the second half. And as James says on YouTube, we didn't lose the second half. We just brutally lost the first 30 minutes of this game.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing. I mean, we got some young kids out there. We did get a goal in the run of play, which has eluded us this season so far, or at least, since the pandemic has hit. That's a lie also. We had some, I don't know, my brain is fried. It's been a while.
Here's the thing. There's a couple positives to talk about from tonight, and we do have to. I've got echoes of Dave Johnson joining the show just the other night and trying to keep me positive in my head right now. But first goal in the black and red for your boy, Julian Gressel tonight. So that's exciting to see. He's been close a couple times. He had another good performance tonight.
Yeah, it was a good shot on a decent. There were a few pieces of good build-up play there in the second half, and like I said, I'm not sure whether that was DC United getting a good foothold or the youth players really coming in.
I mean, we definitely had opportunities in the second half.
Or if that was Philly just like coasting, because they could have coasted.
Yeah, and it was exciting to see, obviously, the debut for Moses Nyman. The dude's 16, right? I mean, it's so great to see him. I mean, he was playing out there with Griffin Yao and with Kevin Paredes. Sorga got a chunk of minutes tonight. He probably should have scored at least 1, if not 2.
Oh, I really wanted Yao to get that assist. That would have been so great.
Been sweet. Beautiful square by him.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't the night for DC United. But as I mentioned, at the lead off of the show, there's more important things going on in the world right now, and that's something that DC United have spoken a lot about this week. Particularly in the sports world, in the wake of the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Bucks refused to take the court for a playoff game against the Orlando Magic earlier on Wednesday. Actually, the 4 of us were here that night, prepping to do the show live, and that happened. All NBA games were postponed until today, and there were numerous cancellations across the WNBA, Major League Baseball, and of course Major League Soccer. The soccer players in MLS orchestrated a nearly league-wide strike during the matches Wednesday night. Orlando and Nashville had actually kind of kicked off like right as some of that was coming together. So that game did go forward, but it was a massive statement across sports and something that we haven't seen, to this scale before. And DC United actually, more close to home, they didn't have a game. They played on Tuesday, but they canceled Thursday's press conference, and instead they actually went ahead and released a statement, which we'll go ahead and read on air. This is the DC United club statement. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was killed by a police officer. On June 12th, 2020, Rayshard Brooks was shot and killed by a police officer. On August 23rd, 2020, a police officer shot Jacob Blake 7 times in his back, leaving him paralyzed. These senseless acts by members of our law enforcement spanned 3 months. When George Floyd's life was taken from him, we pledged to use our voice and platform to be a driving force of change. Many Americans are now more aware of the systemic racism and social injustice that resides in our country. There must be fundamental change. We will be relentless in our effort to demand change, and we will continue to use our platform to push for social justice, equality, and police accountability in our country. Police brutality against black Americans has to stop. The senseless killing of black Americans has to stop. That's the DC United club statement that they released on Thursday. And, of course, on Friday, the club held a press conference with Coach Ben Olsen, Earl Edwards Jr., who's a member of the Black Players Coalition in Major League Soccer, and Julian Gressel. And guys, it was a powerful press conference. I know, Sam, you were able to join it as well.
Yeah, it was really powerful, and I'll add that Earl Edwards Jr. is actually on the board, so he was able to discuss. He came on in a Black Lives Matter mask. His shirt said "Black all the time," if I'm remembering correctly. And that was really the focus of the press conference, and all three of them kind of said, "Yeah, soccer's my job, but that's not what we're here to talk about today," which I felt was really powerful. And Earl Edwards Jr., and we'll get into this a lot more later, but he gave DC United a lot of credit for that statement. He said that we were one of the first sports teams that he had seen to put out a statement that really meant something and really addressed this head on. It wasn't just kind of empty words talking around it. Those last two lines of the DC United statement really left something with me. And then Gressel also specifically said, I'm not here to talk about soccer, and I'm probably not going to be for a little while, because while sports are important, there are more important things happening right now.
Yeah, and as we look toward media availability tonight, we're expecting to hear from Coach Ben Olsen here momentarily about tonight's performance, and, of course, hopefully a player or two as well. But I'm glad you mentioned that, Sam, because I don't expect a lot of tonight's press conference to be about the game. We expect to hear more about the more important things going on in the world, and of course I'm sure they'll field a number of questions about tonight's performance, because it was not pretty on the field. But I think what we're going to talk about later in the show is that it's not all about what's on the field, right?
Yeah.
And especially on nights like tonight, that does come into perspective.
Yeah, we wish we were better on the field, absolutely, but when you take into account the results of a sports game versus the loss of lives, I think it's pretty clear which one comes out on top.
Yeah, it can't be understated that what's happening in this country needs to change, and we need to pull our attention. And we talked in depth amongst ourselves about whether or not we should do this podcast and talk about sports right now. But just like soccer has given the players a platform to talk about these injustices, and they're using that to great effect right now. And I encourage them, and I'm proud of them, and I hope that they continue to do so. I feel like it's our duty as well to do that tonight on the show. So we will get into the soccer, because that's why we're here. But we're also here for what needs to happen in this country.
We're receiving confirmation right now that Ben Olsen and Felipe will be joining us here in just a few minutes for media availability. But going back to the press conference on Friday, which obviously again. They anticipated the normal cadence is match day -2, right? We typically hear from Coach Olsen and two players 2 days before a game. They postponed that on Thursday. We moved it to Friday. And Earl Edwards Jr., Sam, as you mentioned, was wearing a black all the time shirt, as well as a Black Lives Matter mask. And he gave some really great quotes, talking through his experience. He's specifically, excited about what DC United as a club are doing, and he alluded to the fact that his experience has been different here in DC than it's been at some previous clubs, which was exciting to hear. And he actually came back on the mic afterwards. He got up to leave and then came back to the podium to talk just a bit about the work that we're all doing as a whole to support the Black Lives Matter movement is important, and that anytime we want to talk, he can make that happen, and he wants to use this platform to make a change. I think that's what we've seen with a lot of the players in the league.
Yeah, and we just actually had a comment of someone asking, are we going to be able to talk about the game today, which we'll definitely get to. We're a post-game show, but it does take the precedent tonight.
Yeah, and I don't feel like we should get into I know the questions in the press conference will address the same issues that we're addressing right now, and like I said before, we'll get to the game. We can talk about it if you really want to. I see some people in the chat on YouTube talking about how the game went, and we recognize that's what we're all here for. But we're also I hope that we're all here for this message as well. And I'm proud of DC United. Definitely in the past few weeks for their outreach on the events happening in our country, what they've been able to say and do, and my bold claims today, James, as he hits the YouTube comment, my bold claims is that we should treat everyone with respect and not kill them. That's all I have tonight. We have Ben Olsen stepping up to the podium.
All right.
So if we want to cut there, John.
Yep. Let's go ahead and go live to head coach Ben Olsen.
Your personnel was not at full strength, but given that, what was your reaction to the first 25 minutes?
You give up an early goal in a set piece is super disappointing, and now the instincts of the players are now to go get it back and chase a little bit, and then we get extended against a very good team with space, and they took advantage of the space that we gave them, and that's when they're at their best, and we allowed them to be at their best for that stretch. And then we got a little bit more structure to our game there after that, and made it more difficult on them. But at that point, it's 3-0. It's a tall task.
We'll go back to Steve Goff. Another question. Steve, go ahead.
Ben, what can you say about Bill Hamid's absence tonight?
He needed a few days to deal with some personal stuff, and we'll leave it at that.
We'll go to Jason Anderson next. Jason, go ahead.
Ben, you guys were not just missing Bill, you were missing quite a few other guys. Do you have an update on guys like Birnbaum and Briant who were in the last game?
Yeah, both of them have ankle knocks that some ligament and I think some bone spur stuff. Both of them were swollen and limping, and just it wasn't a game that they could have played through. I don't think they're that significant to keep them out for much more time, but we'll see. They're kind of game to game from here on out. Hopefully that stuff settles down and they can get back with the group this week, hopefully to prepare for Wednesday. If not Wednesday, there's a quick turnaround for Sunday. We're going to continue to need everybody. Fisher and Odoi come back into the fold, I think, this week, starting Monday. Eddie's going to be a little bit. Eddie's going to be a good, month plus. But again, we could have done better tonight. I don't care about necessarily the personnel. We could have made it much more difficult on them, and I'm disappointed in myself and the group in that the first 20 minutes just wasn't. It just wasn't good enough.
We'll go back to Steve Goff. Steve, go ahead.
Ben, you got your homegrowns in there. Do you see, obviously you were shorthanded, so the opportunity presented itself, but do you see them getting more and more minutes as this unfolds in the next few weeks?
Well, I'll say this. If they keep playing the way they're playing at training, and when I do give them minutes in the game, then the answer is yes. I'm glad no one's making a big deal necessarily about Kevin, because I'm cautious about him getting too comfortable. But he has been extremely sharp for the last 3 games. As a 17-year-old kid, it's a lot of fun to coach him and watch him play the way he is at this level. That was, Griffin's best game with us. He was dangerous, and he smells how to manage manufacture goals or provide. So fun youngster to continue. A guy we've watched and nurtured at this club for a long time, and to see him get his first game is a special moment for him and his family and DC United family. Frankly, I mean, he's all three of those kids have promising futures with this club, and I thought Donovan had a pretty good game as well. You know, it wasn't an easy game. Again, they are, you know, this is as good a team as there is in this league that we went against tonight. And, you know, again, I wish we would have made it a little bit tougher on them in the first, certainly from the get-go. But if you're not having a great day and you don't do everything in the right way, they can hit you this way.
Thanks, Ben. That's all we have. Thank you.
That's DC United head coach Ben Olsen, and you know, it's important to shift back, you know, to the game for a little bit here. He made some good points, but he was obviously not happy. You know, he didn't make any excuses out of the lineup, and the lineup tonight was decidedly not first choice. We'll just say that. Obviously, Bill Hamid unavailable for personal reasons, so Chris Seitz gets, I believe, his first start for DC United in goal.
Maybe a friendly last year against Marseille, like those French friendlies. I think we saw him play, or a U.S. Open Cup maybe too. But yeah, not a MLS regular season game.
Yeah, and in the back line again here, you know, three quote unquote center backs. It's Joseph Mora, who's not a center back, Donovan Pines, who's obviously just now getting a good chunk of minutes in the middle, and you know, Schoberg, who's making his DC United debut, and you know, talking to some friends during the game. I don't know how often they played three in the back in Columbus, so kind of out of position for him too. So not terribly surprising to give up 4 goals.
Yeah, I mean it's hard too because it's like nobody had a great game, so it's not like one person kind of let us down. It was just there was kind of a slump within the team, so it's kind of hard to pick out individual players and talk about how they did because everyone was kind of on the same page of just being like a step off. I mean, I thought that Kevin did show a lot of heart, but I thought the whole team at points did show a lot of heart, and we absolutely had build up and we had moments.
It's so hard to get down on this team because tonight was terrible. There's no way around it. It was a terrible performance. The Union are a good team. The Union played a great game. But the team, they show promise. You love seeing debuts for some of the young kids like Moses, obviously tonight. Sorga could have scored a couple goals. You know, there's a lot of fun in this team. Yeah,
Yao had that amazing almost assist. Like, you definitely saw those moments, and, you know, you had just a couple that just didn't go our way. I mean, if it weren't for the first 30 minutes, I feel like we'd feel a lot differently about this game. Obviously, that was, like, really tough to watch, and you never want to be down 3 goals in the first half. But I think the second half was a lot better.
Look, I think the first 30 minutes of this game was indicative of the game. But Ben Olsen said it. Philly are one of the best teams in this league. They're as good as we'll face probably because they can hold their own. Shabelko is a really good striker. Aronson is a budding young player. I want to get back into the lineup a little bit. I don't think Pines was set up for success tonight.
No, it
wasn't. He's only, like John said, he's only just starting for DC United, and he's put back there with someone who doesn't play center back and someone who just joined this team. I don't know how you thought that team wasn't going to concede 3 goals in 20 minutes.
Well, it was interesting. John made this point during the game. It's interesting because at a prior press conference, Ben was asked if this would be the lineup that we use consistently or not, and he said that there was going to be adjustments for each team. And it's interesting to me that when you have Pines, who's the most veteran center defender in this lineup, right? I mean, neither of his other 2 partners have had experience in doing that. So it's interesting to me that he continued with the back 3 because you would think that going against Philly, especially being so bare bones as we were, that you would switch to a back 4 so you're not conceding 3 goals like that.
I put it in the chat that I was hoping for a 4-4-2 tonight. It would have made sense. I understand that.
So do you put Gressel at right back there? I mean, I'm just looking at available players, right? Because I agree with you, and for sure, right? Like 3 in the back against Philly away is not generally the move you'd want to see, especially if you're willing to mix it up. But you don't have Russ, you don't have Fish. I guess Oduyacho not available either. Who's the right back?
I guess
right back's
Gressel.
Got to be Gressel.
Okay, so I guess if you move Gressel back, and what do you do? 4-2-3-1. 3-1, the normal kind of formation. So Segura slots in at right mid then?
So no, Segura has to play up top with Kamara in the starting lineup. It's not going to be pretty, but I mean, it's going to be more defensively stout than what we had.
So
Gressel knows how to play right back. Bynes knows how to play center back.
What's your formation if you got two up top then? You're doing 4-4-2?
4-4-2. Just real simple. 2015 DC United, we're not good, but we can defend and grit for 90 minutes. Because of all games that needed to be gritted and nasty, it was this one where we're playing down our captain and center back and our goalkeeper, and we have a ton of injuries. Our record-breaking. Yeah, this was a gritty game. This needed Benny Ball, of all things. And I know, oh man, don't come at me too hard, guys. But this game needed it. I would prefer.
Pray for Joshua in the comments.
I would prefer Benny Ball than that first 25 minutes. And they came out with energy again in the first 10 minutes. I thought they were going to make some fun, interesting runs, but they were not stout in the back. And that's what's been keeping us alive in these games so far, is that Hamid will come up with a spectacular save and our defense will be 7 people behind the ball and will block shots like no one else in the league. But if we don't do that, then it's wide open.
We're live here on Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast, presented by Heineken and live at Across the Pond in DuPont Circle. We want your thoughts on tonight's game. You can join the show using the hashtag Tried and True DCU or jumping in the chat either on YouTube or on Twitter Live. And we'll probably open up the call-in line in a little bit here, but we are awaiting to hear from Felipe here any moment, joining the media after the game.
Who had a pretty silly yellow card pretty early on.
Standard.
I mean, yes.
I think DC United games are scripted at this point. We look really good the opening minutes, and then Felipe gets a yellow card at some point. DC United concede at some point, and then it's like grit for the rest of the game.
Felipe did wear the armband tonight, though, which I didn't notice at the beginning of the game. I think I was still pretty stunned by the lineup. But yeah, Felipe did wear the captain's armband tonight.
Who else would you have given it to?
Someone that didn't play for Red Bull.
So who else would you have given it to? Can I have a name?
Kamara is a veteran in this league, but not the same way. I know. Look, Felipe's a been an awesome player. That's who he was always going to give it to.
No, Felipe was definitely always going to.
Moreno has been with this team longer. Maybe he's not able to communicate to the ref as like Felipe could.
Yeah, I also think that Felipe just is maybe a little bit more present on this team, and that's potentially just me from like looking at the social media, and maybe he interacts a little bit more, but I could see the team rallying around him more so than they would rally around Mora, and that's nothing to take away from Mora. I just don't see him being like the cheerleader guy to try to host the team on his back.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of folks in this fan base who still actively dislike Felipe, and I get that. I think it was the right call to give him the armband. I mean, the only other person that I would have chosen maybe would have been Julian Gressel, but Felipe's been here a little bit longer. I think he's probably a little bit more suited for it at this point, and maybe that's something that Gressel moves into over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see Gressel becoming the captain of DC United. I know Joshua would love to see it.
I'm just happy he scored that goal tonight. We haven't seen an open play goal in how long? Let's talk about that for a little bit. It was amazing. It was like it wasn't a whistle that led to a DC United goal this time. It's crazy.
And there were definitely opportunities for other ones.
So many. The ball Gressel played into Moreno that he puts Moreno's sitting in the box all by himself.
Yeah, I think Pines had a couple opportunities that I was like, oh, he almost had it. I think Assad had a couple opportunities.
One John mentioned was brutal. That's
a couple.
That one was like expected goal of like 0.9. Like you need to score that every time.
Yeah.
And even the side netting one, we didn't get a replay. I think we obviously it was a Philly home game. It was the Philly feed tonight that DC United was using, but I was a little surprised we didn't get a good replay on that. It looked like it didn't miss by much from here. Interestingly enough, expected goals tonight from InfoGoal. What do you guys think?
Oh, decent.
It's not nearly as bad as
decent. They have like 2.5 at least.
Do you think so?
I think so.
I'm here to tell you they definitely did not have that many. Although I'm surprised as well. I would have had it above too.
Sorga's was a full that is an expected goal, like 1.0.
Yeah, it was 2.21 for Philly to 1.05 for DC. So it just not a whole lot of big opportunities shown on the map here other than the Sorga one, which was a 50% probability, which actually seems kind of lower than I would have thought.
That does seem extremely low, maybe because no one expects Yao to be making that cross. I think I would have been fine with the 2-1 loss.
Yeah.
The alternative.
Well, and there's something to be said.
We have Felipe coming up to the podium now.
Okay, let's cut live to Felipe.
Off Steve, go ahead.
Hi, Felipe. Thanks for your time.
No problem,
Uh,
Steve.
It's been a while since this team has won a game.
Yeah.
How much is that wearing on the team mentally now?
It's always difficult when we go a period without winning, but we know that the only way to change this situation is keep going, keep believing only us gonna turn this around, and we gotta believe in each other, and that's what we've been doing. Things are not going our way, but we know if we keep working hard, eventually we're gonna change this thing around, and we're gonna keep going. We as a group are together, we stick together, everyone is together, and we're looking forward for the next game already.
Thanks, Felipe. We'll go to Jason Anderson next. Jason, go ahead.
Hi, Felipe. With the number of guys that were absent tonight, was it just an unfamiliarity or something along those lines that maybe contributed to the first half going the way it did?
I think it's not about we can't give excuse. Guys that's coming in is part of the group. We believe in trusting each one of those guys, and it's just think right now it's not getting our way. We can't put on guys that are coming in or guys that are injured. We gotta believe in trusting in each other, and that's what we be doing. It's no one's fault. We win as a group and we lose as a group, and so it's no one's fault. So no time to point fingers. We just gotta keep working hard and try to eliminate individual mistakes.
Thanks, Felipe. We'll go to Jimena next. Jimena, go ahead.
Felipe, thanks for your time. What do you think the team needs to improve on after this match? And I want that you be more specific.
I think, like in the beginning of the last two games, we had chances to score goals. It's about the the confidence when you score the first goal. In the last couple games, we have been conceding goals, and it's difficult to keep pushing after you score a goal. So when we have chance, we need to bury it. We need to put one in to build that confidence and take the pressure a little bit from the defense. I think we as a group we need to be more, have that killing instinct around the goal and put one in, and build that confidence from there.
Great, thanks, Felipe. I'll pause for just 5 seconds to see if anyone else has any questions.
No problem.
All right, Felipe. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Well, that's Felipe's first media availability we've had live postgame since we've been carrying the press conferences. And, well, he took a lot of that on the team's shoulders as well. They've got to get better.
I think there's not much more to say, right? Like, everyone kind of acknowledges that wasn't the performance that the team would have wanted to put out there, and it just needs to be better, and everyone kind of felt really deflated. I know that we all feel really deflated right now, but that's just kind of the mood around this team, around this game right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to talk about in this game. Is the DC United's defense was bad in the first half. In the second half, it looked like either Philly let off or DC United found a little bit more footing. The youth players played well. They looked like they belong in this league. I told John halfway through it, the second half, you're not supposed to get kids' first minutes down 4-0 or 4-1 on the road. You're supposed to get them, a home game. You're winning by 2 or 3, and get them some free garbage time minutes, right? So they can get their feet wet and accustomed. It looks like this team is gonna get dipped right into the deep end per se. And
I think it's gonna be hard to get them those ideal debut minutes with the way the season's been going, though.
Yeah, and at least I'm glad Ben is feeling good. Ben has faults, but I think he does a good job with these youth players. I know we always want to see more, and I feel like we're getting a little bit of that this year. But I think he does really think about how to bring them up into the game. His comments about Paredes were spot on. I hope he doesn't get too comfortable. I don't think he really took a step forward today. He has been in the past. He's great on the ball. He looks like he belongs out there, but we need him to keep stepping forward. And Yao did look different than I've ever seen him play for the DC United full team today. He was a spark off the bench, and Nyman, it's good for him just to get that debut and some minutes. That's what I'm taking away from this game. Sorga looked fine. He's only 21, so I'll mention him there. He looked fine. He should have finished that chance, but he was in the right spot. So you can't be too upset at him, even if there was a goal differential of like 0.5 according to the stats. I think it should have been a 1. But look, DC United did not great tonight. Young player is good. That's all I have to say, really.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it. I think we had the chances. They didn't do enough to make it feel like this game was better or ever really within our reach. We good?
I'm not sure we're getting you.
I was say we're having trouble with your audio here, Sam.
Is that any better?
It is not any better. Let's go ahead and throw it to commercial break. We'll fix Sam's audio, and we'll be right back here on Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast presented by Heineken. Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Can't listen to us live on YouTube? Fine. Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or Pocket Casts the morning after the match.
Try to figure it out.
Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 90 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening live. If you want to join the conversation, let us know what you think in real time using the chat on YouTube Live, on Twitter using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU, or text us at 202-892-6328.
Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 60 seconds.
Let us know what you think between games on Twitter at hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU or email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com.
Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 30 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU. Again, that's Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU.
We are back here on Tried and True, the DC United Postgame podcast presented by Heineken, live at Across the Pond in DuPont Circle, Washington, D.C. tonight. Crowd's thinning out a little bit as the game didn't really help matters tonight. We've obviously talked quite a bit about the game tonight. Sam's mic is working again, yes?
It is,
yeah,
yes.
Look at that.
All right, well, I'm back too.
Good to have you back, Sam. We started off the show talking about a more important topic tonight, and I think that's how we'll send the show out. Black Lives Matter is obviously back, really in the forefront of the sports media again, and rightfully so after what happened in Kenosha last week. But we've got a few different things to kind of break down, about what we all can do, and obviously the three of us are in a difficult, but also really important position as white folks who obviously host this show. We're not necessarily directly impacted by a lot of the systemic racism that goes on in the world, but we do have an important role to play. We're not just on the sidelines on this. And Joshua, I think you had mentioned, kind of really leading in with the individual responsibility that we all have here.
Yeah, I think it's important, especially if it doesn't affect you directly, to recognize that you still have a responsibility wherever your loyalty lies. If your loyalty lies to this country more, or to the world or humanity or religion or whatever, people of all races are part of those groups, and we should look at
Well, unfortunately, not just this week. I mean, that some of those reports are from over time, right? I mean, this is a problem with Delroy Hansen that we've seen come out over years. I mean, it wasn't just a one-time instance with him, and I think that's indicative of even a larger problem.
Yeah, and look, that's not DC United. That's not this pod. But
yeah,
we put time into this league. We put time into the sport, time into this. Like I said, this country or this just group of humanity, and so I feel like we are all responsible to call that out for what it is. It's unacceptable, and I hope that honestly the MLS came out a little soft on it. They didn't immediately remove him, but they do have a committee, and I hope that committee isn't just a smoke and mirrors. I hope they actually find out the truth, and if it's anything like what we've seen online. We need to take just action. And as soccer fans, DC United fans even, we need to demand that those actions are taken.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought it back into sports because, I'm obviously learning a lot myself, over the past several months of this, things that I should be seeing differently and doing differently. And, for me, sports have always been an escape from the real world. That's what I enjoy so much about it because no matter what's going on, you take 90 minutes in soccer or half a day in American football sometimes, and that's what matters, right? Like the game that's going on the field. But if there's one thing I've learned, over the past few months is that's not how we should be looking at this. Like the whole idea of sticking to sports, in the media as we're doing here, that's not it. And the idea that these players, expecting them to shut out society while they're on the field and put in everything as if there's nothing going on. I mean, these folks, every player is impacted by the pandemic right now, right? And for black players, they're impacted and have been impacted forever, by systemic racism and these challenges and the police brutality and all these things that we're seeing. And so it's just unacceptable from us as fans to expect that they just compartmentalize all that and go out there and perform for us. That's not what this is. I mean, these guys are competitors. These guys are world-class athletes. They want nothing more than to go out there and do that, right? I mean, that's what they do for a profession. They love the game, but it's not fair, to ask them to just put all that aside when this is what's going on in the world, and then that's been something that like I said, on a personal level, I feel like I've learned a lot over this year, and obviously tonight's performance, as Coach Olsen said, was not acceptable. But again, like there's just more important things going on in the world right now, and I think that's what we need to focus on.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, like, we have been asking these black players of sports and black people in general in this country to just ignore these things. Like, this isn't new that black people are being shot by police, and racism is not just starting up in this country. Like, it has been, and we're all talking about here how we're learning things now, but that is a direct result of our privilege of being white people. So they have dealt with being afraid of being shot by the cops for no reason, right? And this is just something that we're finally learning about. And that's on all of us. Like Joshua said, it's on all of us to not just accept that it's not affecting me. So I get to ignore the fact that this is an uncomfortable conversation. Right. And that's something that strikes me because it's very emotionally taxing, right? To like hear about these things, and it really brings you down. But I just keep reminding myself like that's my privilege, because it's been the past couple months that I've been feeling this, and like Black people have been dealing their whole lives with, they've been dealing with this for their whole lives.
I think I shouldn't have to bring it back to DC United things, but just to bring it back, I don't feel like you can, and look, if you disagree, we can talk about it somewhere, but I don't feel like you can shout Bill Hamid from the stands and then not stand with him in this fight, because he, like John was saying, he deals with that. He steps away, he takes off the shirt, and he's just a person on the street and a person of color. And the fact right now is that means something different, and we should be fighting to change that.
Yeah, and we read the DC United statement at the top of the show tonight, which I think we're all very proud of, and that's something that even members of the team, as Earl Edwards was telling us just a couple days ago, they're definitely proud. A number of the employees on the team coming out on social media very proud of the statement. But I'll tell you, if you're listening to the show now and you're looking for the how to do it right and not how to do the canned statement, check out our neighbors to the north. The Baltimore Ravens put out just a world-class statement on this matter, with actionable things that can be done. We obviously don't want to get political on this show, but they actually listed things concrete actions that can be taken, and I think, Joshua, that's a lot of what you're talking about, is like we all have a role to play in this, right? I mean, it's not good enough to just say like, yeah, I'm not racist, so forget it. No, we've all got to be better. We've got to be anti-racist, and we've got to build a society that allows for equality for everyone.
You're right, and I know it has become politicized, but it's not political to say that innocent people shouldn't be shot.
Exactly.
To that point, like, guilty people also shouldn't be shot, right? If you're shoplifting in a store, it's not the police officer's job. That's why we have our judicial system, right? So like, I also don't agree with that argument, but it's not political to say that Black people shouldn't fear for their lives on a daily basis. And yeah, I don't think that's us being political about it. Kind of going back to DC United, Earl Edwards Jr. did mention that he really appreciated the way that DC United was handling everything that's happening right now and the actionable steps that they are taking, and that as a fan was very interesting to me, because obviously we all saw that DC United had painted I Can't Breathe and BLM on Audi Field a couple months ago. I don't know.
Time is really just tough to keep up with.
Yeah. And a lot of people were saying, that's so great to see that you're making this stance, but I need to see some actionable change after this. It's not enough to just be performative. And we've seen a lot of companies and organizations be performative right now. And as a fan, I was waiting to see what DC United was going to come out of this. And I haven't seen anything, but something that Earl Edwards Jr. said was that the team is doing things. They are having these conversations and they are taking actionable steps. And just because we haven't necessarily seen that yet doesn't mean it's not happening. So I do think that is important to the fan base to point out. And that's not to say that, check, I'm a DC United fan, I don't have to do anything anymore. Like, that's not to say that by any means.
Not at all.
It's just to continue looking out for those things with DC United and always continuing to push them to do better, because we can all always do better. And that's why you saw the games on Wednesday be canceled. I know we touched on this at the beginning of the show. Obviously, there was the one game that went and did get played. And if you listen to Extra Time, they talked a little bit about how it was just a lot to kind of coordinate that. I guess I learned that there are laws about whether or not you can have your phone on in the locker room after a certain time, but that was
I think it's part of the collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, so that was the first game to kick off, and they just really weren't able to reach those players in time. But that's something I don't remember which player was saying it on extra time, and I think Earl Edwards Jr. touched on it in the press conference, but that in Orlando, MLS was saying like, we're gonna stand with you guys. We're going to try to make a difference. We saw that display right at the beginning of the tournament, but the league hasn't done a whole lot since then. I think the Black Players Coalition has really been let down with the actions that MLS has taken since then. So that's why you saw those games not happen on Wednesday. And then he did go on to say that, the Wednesday games were postponed or canceled. I don't know if they're going to be rescheduled, but then MLS did sit down with these players and they did kind of talk about what needs to happen moving forward. And that's why all the teams decided to continue playing these games.
I just put in a message to the YouTube chat, and I'll bring it up here. I said thanks everyone for sticking through this hard talk. We love you, Vamos United, and I've received multiple comments saying that thank you for talking about this issue, and I get this sense, and it's really heartwarming to see people that love this team and love other people. I don't know what the world will look like the next time we talk to you guys, where we'll be at in this fight, or anything, but I'm thankful just for those two comments that it reaffirms my faith in this team, who have done a good job on this topic, and I know we have players who will continue to do that, and and you guys, just being part of this community is. I feel like DC United fans get it most of the time. Dave talked a lot about it last time when he was on our show. It makes me proud. We got a lot of work to do, but I'm confident in this team to keep doing the right thing, and this fan group to mostly do the right thing. We're a good community.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that from the community as well. I mean, this obviously, in an ideal world, wasn't the conversation we'd hoped to have tonight, just like it wasn't the game we'd hoped to have watched tonight. But that in a lot of ways, this is what matters right now. And so I definitely appreciate the opportunity to speak out about it. Obviously, as we talked about as a white male, I think that's something that's important, and especially the group here of us speaking out about it. And I'm sure that this won't be the only time we bring it up on this show. Certainly eager to see what happens with the Black Players Coalition meeting with Commissioner Don Garber. That should be happening here in the next couple of days or so, I believe, was the statement from the league the other night. We need to start talking a lot more about fewer statements of sorrow and more concrete actions, right?
Yeah.
That's where we need to go. And DC United, as we mentioned, obviously leading the charge. And it was great to hear Earl say that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I fully believe that there is. Sooner rather than later, we need to see it, and we need to see it from the whole league, and we need to see it from the whole country and the whole world at this point, right? I mean, that's where we've got to go, so that we can get back to, the sports that we love, and everyone from an equal playing field.
I agree, and that's something that Gressel had said, is this is the game for the world, right? And everyone should be welcome in that. But I think it's important to note that, this is just the starting point, and it's many, 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 many years too late. But really all that's being asked of right now is that Black Lives Matter, right? That's at the core. I don't know how anyone looks at that and disagrees with that, but really people are just asking to not be killed right now. But in reality, racism, it's not just about not fearing being shot, right? It's about what your experience is in the workplace. It's about what your experience is, buying homes and closing the wealth gap. And it's so much more than that, and it's going to take hopefully not that long, but it's going to take a lot of hard work to kind of close all these gaps that we see, because racism is seen in really every facet of life, and that's why these conversations are so important, is because we all kind of need to start and then move forward together.
Yeah, well said, Sam. And shifting back, to on the field here for just a moment before we wrap up the show, we do want to send another congratulations out to Moses Nyman, 16-year-old homegrown player, black player, making his debut for the Black and Red tonight, and that's super exciting to see, right? And I think as we transition back onto the field here to close the show, in a lot of ways the youth we're seeing with this team really is headed in the right direction. Loudoun United, we've mentioned, ton of fun to watch. Unfortunately, they didn't win tonight against Red Bulls 2. I think it was a 3-2 loss the last I saw. It was kind of tough to track.
They had a Pride Night tonight, though.
They did.
Which is awesome, and I hope everyone had fun with that.
Yeah, there was a moment in tonight's game where I kind of wished we were there instead of
the whole game.
Instead of watching this game. Yeah, well, but we did have a great experience tonight. Our first live show since March. Across the Pond is doing a great job with social distancing, with implementing all of the COVID-19 protocols. I can count several containers of hand sanitizer from where I'm sitting right now, and they're still doing contact tracing, which I know I've mentioned on the show before, but that's exciting to see. So for all of our listeners, check out Across the Pond. If you're interested in person, they've got indoor and outdoor dining. If you're much more interested in staying at home at this time, you can do that as well. They pick up delivery services are available, and please use the promo code podcast. That's for 5% off for our listeners on Tried and True. So check them out. The great people. They'll put on any soccer game you want.
Any sports game you want.
Pretty
really.
much.
They have
yeah.
a channel. Yeah, I know they do rugby. They play football games. So they're just a good overall sports bar.
Absolutely. On the Loudon roundup here as we look ahead to the upcoming games, Loudon are next of the DC teams. They play again in Tuesday, so very short turnaround for Loudon away to Pittsburgh, a tricky Pittsburgh team. It doesn't get easier for Loudon, but that's Tuesday at 7 p.m. Of course, available on ESPN+. The Spirit tentatively are playing on Saturday against Sky Blue on Big CBS, so I think we're waiting details to be released on that. It sounds like they're going to be officially at Segra, but that's exciting and more great exposure on national TV for the Spirit and for the league as a whole. That's something that we're really excited to see.
Yeah, it's awesome. Really excited. Really, really sad that Rose won't be in the lineup anymore, and we weren't able. There were conversations about Kelly O'Hare coming, and we're not going to be able to see her. But I think this team has a lot of promise outside of just the national team players. So it'll be really exciting to see them get back in action.
Yeah, and of course, the premise of this show obviously is DC United, and they will play Wednesday night away to the New York Red Bulls in Jersey, so a little bit further up 95. Don't know what the team's travel plans are there. I know they bus today, charter bus to Philly. I'm sure they'll be home for the next few days, and we'll see if they take a charter flight or if they train up or bus up there. But quick turnaround for this team. Hopefully, some of the injuries can heal. One of the things we're seeing in the chat here, which is interesting conversation to go out on, was the lineup that we ended the game with today, given the players we have available, actually the best lineup. You've got the three kids in there, you've got Sorga in there. I don't know, maybe you go crazy and maybe it's not that crazy, but you put Sorga in up top next to Kamara. What does that look like, and do you make any changes to the back line? I think those are kind of the key questions going into Wednesday.
I think it kind of depends also on when we can expect some of these players coming back. I believe I saw that Bill will be back next game. I think I also saw that Steven Bergman is out with a bone bruise.
That's
so
right.
He might not be back quite yet.
And
is
Briant,
Russell
I think,
coming
was
back? Yeah, is Briant coming back?
I think they were both questionable.
He was questionable. Briant was questionable. We should probably see him back next time. So it'd be interesting to see if we see him or Schoberg. Not the greatest debut for Schoberg, but
so that was
No,
to say
wasn't.
that I would, if some of those key players are back, I would put them in the starting lineup before I started our finishing lineup tonight.
Yeah.
Right, I would definitely make those changes. But I also wouldn't be mad, and Ben said that in the press conference, if these young kids keep playing the way they're playing, he's almost not really viewing it as I'm going to give these young kids opportunities. He's viewing it as this is my player who's proven in practice that they deserve to be in the starting lineup. So I'd love to see that continue and them to continue pushing the envelope. Paredes has gotten all the starts recently, and I don't think he's let up. Today might not have been the best showing, but it was nobody's really best showing,
No.
right? So I'd love to see him continue being in the lineup.
Speaking of showings, are we just going to skip the man of the match segment today, or?
Oh, we almost did. Wow, good save. I was ready.
I'm
I was
really
ready to
mad at
wrap
you,
it.
Joshua.
I'll go first.
Yeah, you got to go first.
Julian Gressel finally scores for DC United. It was a worldie through the hands, a rocket. Happy for him. Hopefully that is him breaking the glass, and now he's able to, keep scoring and keep providing for this team. He's had the passes, and they've been there throughout these past few games. Hopefully he can get some of the other players scoring those.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with Gressel today. Hopefully he subbed off, so he should be able to go again next time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Joshua. He's my man of the match too, and not just because he was a goal scorer. I think he he had just a brilliant ball into Moreno really in the first half there, and that could have at least should have been on frame, for crying out loud, Junior. But I mean, yeah, Gressel is continuing to improve game over game. Obviously, he's a much better player than we've seen this year. It's not like he's not one of the young kids who's growing into becoming a soccer player. Julian Gressel's a great soccer player.
Old, like
he's not
still
old.
has a lot of time left to play soccer,
and he still could be eligible for the U.S. men's national team in just a couple years. I remember that conversation from what feels like decades ago. But yeah, no, for me it was Gressel as well. Sam?
I'm going to give it to Kevin just because I think you did great. I love seeing the effort out there. I love seeing him improve. What, Joshua?
No, that's what everyone's talking about is how good he did. So that maybe he's the man of the match because that's the takeaway from the match.
Everybody's team Sam tonight.
He's
It's not getting carried away. So I guess and I appreciate